Good afternoon, good evening, you guys. This is Yolingsley on the Nourishing Peace program show on People for People Radio. And we are well into February, aren't we? 2020. It's pretty wild. On a wild trip, and we got the Skype working this week. I don't know what happened last week, but just I guess Skype decided it wanted to go on a little break or something. So it's nice to be with you here. I've got a show prepared that I was going to do last week, and so that was kind of good. I had some more information come to me during the week about basically what I want to look at today on the show is the effects of light in our lives, mostly light. And because I've had some really interesting and amazing case studies with some of my patients and some of the people that I talk to online concerning LED lights and the damage that it's been doing to us. It's so insidious. And as the light is changing outside in our yearly rounds around the whatever, if you want to think the world is flat or round, it doesn't matter. Somehow the light keeps changing. And we are starting to get a little bit more light outside. And so I wanted to, I've been having some real issues with lighting. And I go to a writing class, and it's almost gotten to the point where I can't even go into public buildings anymore. I can feel the effects of these white LED lights up everywhere, because just in the last year, they have been changing them all out everywhere. So I think more and more people are actually having effect from these lights that we think that it's something else. We don't realize that the light is actually damaging us. And as some of you know, I get on this little, my little soapbox sometimes when I hear people talking about using the terms light and dark for evil and good. And it's just interesting to me, because I'm starting to go, well, is that part of the program? Like they're using those concepts to get us to think that all light is good and we want to strive for the light and not be in the dark because the dark is bad. And so then we are more conditioned to not even notice what this insidious light situation that they've been rolling out along with the 5G and stuff, these LED lights that have been almost mandated in most countries. So we're going to take a look at that, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to give them to Vanessa. And so I just wanted to give a big shout out to all you guys in the chat room. Thanks again for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the show tonight. Okay. So I want to, I'm going to just put a link to this photo that I put in the photo area on People for People magazine. I mean, in the link section. If you look to the right of the chat room there, you can see the quick links. And if you scroll down, you go to the photos for people who are listening to this on a podcast. You can find it. You go to photos, and you're going to see one that I put on. If you send me a friend invitation, then I can friend you, and you can go right into my photos, because I like to put things on there. I've got a few of them for tonight's show. This is a photo of the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico. They're the fastest runners in the world. Okay. If you check out that photo and look at the beautiful smiles and the healthy smiles of those kids running. These kids have not been exposed to toxic lighting, toxic food. You can see the wide palettes of their faces. Their teeth are real kind of evenly spaced, and their faces are kind of wide. They have good sort of nasal passage area for their nasals. That's an indicative that these kids have been eating traditional foods. and they're very high up. This is high up in the mountains. See, it's about east of, probably would be like, what is that, Mazatlan, or even more north. There's a town called San Blas. It's a really beautiful fishing village. We actually used to go there for Christmas when I was little. We went there like 2 or 3 times to spend Christmas down in Mexico. And we didn't go up here where these guys were. But these Tarahumara Indians, native people from Mexico, are the fastest runners in the world. There was I think it was like I don't know, it was a very famous race that happened. So there was some sort of like sports people that found out about these guys, these runners, and they arranged a race to see who is really the fastest runners. They had the fastest runners from Africa, the fastest runners from the U.S., from Europe, from all over the place. They brought people from all over the world into this race, and they had this, a couple of the Tarahumara Indians there. And it was really cool because I didn't see the race actually, but this friend of mine told me about it. And so these guys were like way out in front of everybody, and they didn't even really know what a race was because they don't run to race. They just run because it's part of their culture and they love it. I mean, if you look at that picture, they are not suffering. They're not trying to win. They're not trying to do anything. They're just enjoying being in their bodies, and it's like a spiritual practice for them. So anyhow, in this race, these guys were way out in front of everybody, and when they realized what was happening, that they were actually in this race and they were trying to prove that they were the fastest, or that they were way far ahead. Like when these guys go out running, they wait for their friends. It's like they have this concept of community and helping each other out. And they're in sync with that concept in the world of called entrainment, where like the way geese fly, and the way also that like a pendulum, if you put 2 pendulums together and they're swinging at different rates, over time they will start to swing together. So these guys are in touch with those principles in nature because they're very natural people. And so their belief is that if we run together as a group, we're just going to help, like our energy helps to pull the others along. And that's the way that the culture runs, the community runs, where they're not like trying to outdo everybody all the time and be the best at this and that. So in this race that was happening with all the fastest and the strongest runners in the world, they realized what was going on, and they were like, oh, this is bullshit, and so they stopped. They were like almost all the way to the end and stuff of the race, and they actually stopped. And people were really pissed off because, they had put a lot of money and advertising and stuff into this race, and they were just like, no, we are not doing this. And so it was a really cool message to the whole idiocy of the world that we live in, from these people who just sort of stood up for what they believe is right, in that situation. So I wanted to show this photo to you guys because it's just such a beautiful, I'd like to frame this and put it up on the wall in my office to, have people see what a healthy group of kids look like. These guys have not been sitting in front of computers. They don't have computers in their classrooms. Probably haven't been vaccinated. I don't know. They do go out and vaccinate people in the countrysides, but I'm not sure, the situation where they are. But, they're not vaccinated to the amount that our kids are in where we live in the States and in Europe. And they've been eating their traditional foods, right? Their healthy fats. Probably not into, since they're very remote in the Sierra Madres in Mexico, sort of northwestern Mexico, and the Copper Canyon, if you wanted to look it up on the map. So most likely they're not getting hit with a lot of bombardment about using vegetable oils, because in Mexico people do fry things. They use oils, but most Mexicans still use lard as their main form of oil, but in the cities, in the more where people have TVs and stuff, they are starting to massively use vegetable oils. And I think I've talked about this before, where when I go down to Mexico, I always go around to the restaurants and to the taco stands. I like to go to the marketplaces, the open market, and eat there, because that's where you're really going to find people that are still cooking the old way. But there are people, you go up and ask them, what kind of oils do you use? And some of them, they get all excited and they pull out their big, huge bottle of vegetable oil, and they're like, oh, we're using canola oil. And I just go, oh, darn, And I actually bring brochures from the Weston A. Price Foundation, which you can get online. If anybody wants free brochures, I will send some to you. They have they're very simple to read, and they talk about the principles of traditional foods. And oils, of course, is kind of right up on the top of the list and when I work with people, that's the first thing I work on to get them to change back to the old traditional animal fats to cook with. Butter, ghee, oil, lard, or chicken drippings. In Europe, they still use drippings a lot for their fish and chip stands, so that's cool if you can find them. You want to support the people that are still doing the old ways, cooking with the old ways, and preserving the old ways of doing it, and also let them know that you're supporting them because of that. It makes them feel good. I talk to a few people in Europe and in Mexico all the time when they are using lard. I will tell them, I'm going to tell my friends to come here, and I'm going to keep coming here while I'm here, and so that they kind of get that message and get that support. To keep doing that, to keep up with their traditional foods. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the mitochondria. I know that sounds kind of technical, and but I've got a whole bunch of information on it. It's really interesting, and I wanted this photo to be the very first one that I put up, because these guys have tons of mitochondria, and we're going to go in and see what mitochondria are and what they do for us and what happens to them when we eat bad foods, and namely bad fats and lots of sugar and refined foods, factory foods. What happens to the mitochondria? And also the LED lights. So these guys, you can see they're running in full sun. They've got their hats on to protect their eyes from too much glare and stuff, and, but they're being sensible, so they're not being stupid about being out in the sun. But, these guys are full of mitochondria, very healthy mitochondria, I might add, because it takes a lot of energy to run, just to run on the terrain. Look at where they're running. Look at the road. It's like all those rocks, nothing's groomed, Look at their shoes. They use old tires for the soles of their shoes, right? And they're completely flat, and use those leather thongs, right, to tie them onto their feet. And a lot of people, like my son is a runner, and I got him that book called Born to Run. It's actually a book about the Tarahumara Indians, the runners. And that book is, I gave it to my son, and when he read about, they talk about the dynamics of those shoes, of the flat shoes, and how they help you to run better. They keep you sort of more upright, and you get more oxygen. But anyhow, going back to the ATP and the mitochondria, so these guys have lots and lots of very healthy mitochondria in their bodies. Because to run, on that terrain, they're up way high, and looks like that road is coming up higher too. You can tell it's an incline that they're running on, and in the sun, and they run like long distances. These are long distance runners, right? Look how happy they are. Really joyful. It's cool. So, yeah. So if you guys have any questions, be sure to give them to Vanessa. And we'll just get going here. Let's see where my stuff is. Okay, so what kind of got me onto the whole mitochondria road was I was looking into cancer and the whole genetic theory of cancer. And I've never, ever believed in the genetic theory of cancer. And I've always told people that in my office when they come in, they have cancer, and they go, well, my mom had it, my sister had it, my uncles and stuff. But I just don't believe it. I've never bought the genetic theory of cancer. And this article that I found actually talks about, it sort of confirms my suspicions about that whole theory. And it has to do with mitochondria. So I'm just going to read part of this article. And it's an article in the Wise Traditions magazine that just came out, actually, this in fall of 2019. It's called Mitochondrial Health. And this guy is named Wayne Feister, I guess. There's a... Let's see, how can I go about saying this? So there's some scientists who, of course, have not gotten very much publicity because, most of the scientific studies that are getting publicity and getting published have to do with the pharmaceutical industry supporting their theories and their products and stuff to sell. But this is a huge group of scientists that are really starting to look into this now. And of course, Chinese medicine has probably known this. One of the reasons why I always thought that I never believed about the genetics is that, it just takes our brains to be able to be discerning for ourselves. If we have all these like millions of DNAs in our body, we have a choice of which ones we're gonna manifest. So my mom died supposedly of cancer, but nobody's had cancer in my family before or after that. So that's just my sort of, personal experience and why I don't believe in it. But I've seen other situations like that too. So I'm going to read about the mitochondria. So the thing about cancer, okay, so mitochondria are they're little organelles inside of the cells. And each cell in our body has a whole bunch of different organelles. It's got the nucleus, it's got the RNA and the DNA. It's got all these little Golgi bodies, these little things that do different things. And the mitochondria are inside of our cells too. And they're almost like little parasites. They have a similar, they're not really parasite because they belong there and they're functioning to help us. They generate energy, which is in the form of, they call it ATP. So if our body does not, if for some reason we stopped generating ATP, we would last about maybe 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So it's really, really important. The mitochondria are like super, super important. And what's been going on with the bad diets and with these LED lights over time is these mitochondria are getting weaker and weaker and weaker in people, and there's less and less in people. So we're looking at that picture of those runners. That's why I say those guys have lots, and each of their cells in their bodies has tons of mitochondria in it, and they're healthy because they're building lots of energy for them to be running the way that they're running in that photograph, if you check it out. And I wanted to just give a template for, healthy living. What does it look like to be really healthy? Like visually look like. So those mitochondria, they have a lot of properties that look like and they behave like bacteria also. And I don't want to get into that, but just to know that they behave like a lot of their systems is very like a bacteria in our cell, but it's not a bacteria. So so I'm just going to go through a list of things in our environment and in our experiences these days that are affecting the mitochondria. So if we don't have enough mitochondria, we're going to like be really fatigued and tired, and our bodies are not going to regenerate themselves when we get hurt or injured. The mitochondria is what, and the ATP, the energy that the mitochondria produce in a healthy body, is what keeps our bodies healthy. It's like regenerates the tissue. It helps us sleep. It produces melatonin. There's a lot of stuff in there that it does. And when they start to get weak, it just wreaks havoc on our bodies. And I'm feeling like this could be a huge key. I mean, I think it is a huge key to a lot of the health problems that people are having. Even in these programs, I listen to these programs and I love what people are talking about, but it just sounds like people are so unhealthy and having major health issues. And I really feel like, coupled with, all the spiritual work that we're doing, we have to step up and start being warriors and, taking control of the environment that we live in and that our children are living in, and, the schools and the hospitals. So anyway, we're going to go on and talk about all these details and make some recommendations at the end. If you guys, again, if you have any questions, I hope, this is going to be too technical. I'm not really a technical person, so it should be okay. So one of the things, so we said that it acts a lot like a bacteria, and so they're very susceptible, very sensitive to antibiotics. And if, we all know how much antibiotics have been used. Let's see. I'm on, okay. So the antibiotics have been overused, right, in our culture. And so that's like a main culprit of what's actually been contributing to mitochondrial death, is what they call it. There's a whole study of, Yeah, there's a whole study. Am I still on, you guys? Okay. Let's see. Yep, it looks like we are. Okay. I know what I did. I just got off. Okay, sorry. I got off of For People Radio. Sorry, that's okay. I just clicked the wrong button here, so sorry, guys. So the antibiotics. Okay, so my husband just got a toothache 2 days ago. He started complaining about his tooth, and yesterday was Saturday, and he was like really inflamed, in a lot of pain. And I was like, oh God. And I know from Chinese medicine that that a lot of times toothaches are just infection underneath the tooth. And so what I do with Chinese medicine is to give people specific herbs that help to kill the tooth pain. These things the herbal formulas do not affect mitochondria. They're way safer. And so I put him on a Chinese herbal antibiotic that's very strong. It can clear up strep throat and MRSA. I don't know about MRSA, but strep throat and really intense. I've cleared up super intense infections with this formula. And so I put him on high dose of that. And within 2 doses, he, like every 4 hours, he was feeling better. His tooth was not hurting as much. And today's Sunday's been on it for a day and a half. He's feeling way better. He said he's about 90% better today. So I just talked to my aunt, and her grandson got a tooth infection. He's in the hospital, an IV antibiotic drip for a toothache. And I'm just wondering, this kid is probably 12 years old. Like, what is that doing to his mitochondria? It's really sad. Like, people just keep turning to, and getting scared into falling back on the antibiotics and stuff. So antibiotics is a huge problem for the mitochondria. Let's just see. Yeah, so in mammalian cells, so there was these studies. There's like several studies that have concluded that antibiotic use is really damaging to DNA of the mitochondria. so it can kill and harm the mitochondria. So that means that on top of the antibiotics probably not working as effectively as the herbal formulas, it's killing the cells, or the parts of the cells that are producing the energy to actually help the body to heal itself. So, as much as you guys can, when you notice that things are going wrong, if you have a friend or practitioners around you that do herbal medicine, I highly recommend that you make friends with them, that you get in contact with them to get help early on. Because if you can catch these different kinds of infections, including the teeth infections, early on, we can catch it and stop it and fix it really early. So then you don't get scared to go to the doctors, because we were thinking, what if he had gone to the dentist and they probably would have, maybe they would have wanted to do a root canal or some other horrible thing. And, just with this $15 bottle of herbs, he's better in a day and a half. So 90% better. So, that's the thing about antibiotics. If you can really try to catch stuff early, and, a lot of times on the formulas that you do get, if you're having a major problem, like a major toothache like that, you can take higher amounts of the herbs, and just work with somebody who knows what they're doing too, because that really helps. So you don't feel like you're on your own, because then if you end up going into the hospital or the dentist, they're going to scare you into doing, like this IV drip for this little boy. So let's see. The other thing about the diet is the fructose in the diet. So most people, probably not you guys here in the chat room, are eating, sugar and high fructose corn syrup or any kind of fructose. Fructose is actually way sweeter than sugar even. And so that actually, so the way that sugar makes you gain weight is through damaging the mitochondria. Because the mitochondria are those are the things, the energy that it produces helps you to metabolize things, it helps you to repair tissue damage, and it helps you to have energy, and the energy for everything, for your nervous system, for your hormones. So basically everything that our body does is dependent on these little teeny mitochondria in each of our cells. So the fructose really damages that also, the mitochondria. So that's why people get obese, and they're not metabolizing their food, because the mitochondria is the thing that drives the metabolism. And so many people are having gut issues and stuff. And so we think, okay, well, we're eating really good food, we're doing these different diets, we're doing the bone broth, and we're doing this and that. Well, if you're getting exposed to things that are damaging the mitochondria, like, oh good, guys, you're eating. And the next thing on this list here is cell phones. So, and I'm just going to add into there, and I'm going to talk in more depth later on about LED lights. But cell phones have LED lights in their back, in the, and computer screens, the flat screen computers have the LED lights in them. And LED lights are damaging the mitochondria. And I'm going to go a little bit into how that happens. But the radio frequencies in there are just not what our cells are used to dealing with. And another thing that's damaging the mitochondria is statin drugs. So anybody that you know that's got high cholesterol, actually cholesterol is helpful for the mitochondria. Surprise, surprise. And, the infinite wisdom of the medical system, they are trying to get people on low cholesterol diets, and also those cholesterol lowering statin drugs. So if you know anybody that's on these statin drugs, it's so dangerous. Not only just because it takes us to levels of cholesterol that are very damaging, And one of the reasons is because it's damaging to that mitochondria in our system. And every single cell in our body the cell walls are coated with a coat of cholesterol. And so the low cholesterol diets and low animal fats are, I hate to say it, but, if you look at people who have been on these low fat diets and low animal fat diets, they are so unhealthy. It's really sad, and I have really good friends who are on them, and sometimes they come to me for treatment and stuff, and I just don't know what to say, because we could throw all these herbs and I can put acupuncture needles and this and that, but you need the nourishment that our body has been designed to work on. Plus, on top of it, we've got these light sources coming in, damaging us. Yeah, so Vanessa says in the chat room, the brain uses cholesterol as food. Yeah, that's really true. That's why you want to have fat babies. If you know anybody that has a baby or nursing or is pregnant, they want to be eating really good fats, lots of it, right? Because you want that baby to be fat, because the brain is developed. It's all fat, basically. It's cholesterol. So those statin drugs are really nasty. They're very bad. So that's one of the first things I do when people come into my office. I just I ask them what kind of medications they're on, and then if I see that statin drug on there, I'll be like, okay, this is the first thing that we're going to do is work on getting you off of that. The Weston A. Price Foundation has really good brochures, and if anybody wants some, I can send them to you for free. I get the brochures for free. And if you ever wanted to get these brochures for free, you could become a chapter leader in your area. And all you have to do is keep a list of people who are providing natural foods, good foods, farm fresh foods, raw milk, pastured eggs, and meat and stuff like that. Yeah, that's right, Vanessa. Fat babies who are fed fat by good foods, not junk food. That's exactly right. So that's why the obesity happens from this mitochondrial damage. That would be from all those junk foods and not the proper foods, the good fats. So I'm just going to go into this thing about cancer and the DNA. So they noticed that mitochondrial changes and their relationships to cancer has been proven in a simple experiment. When scientists transfer the nucleus of a cell, when they transfer the nucleus of a cell with cancer, so one cell with cancer, they take the nucleus out and they put that nucleus into a normal cell, the genes revert to normal genes. So the cell does not become cancerous. However, when the scientists do the reverse, transferring the nucleus of a normal cell into a cancer cell, the cell remains cancerous, suggesting that the genes are not driving the cancer. Those engaged in this work have concluded that the driver of cancer is not genetic, but dysfunctional mitochondria in the cells. So a healthy cell, the mitochondria actually burn, they burn glucose and they burn fat. And actually fat is the preferred source of fuel that mitochondria want. But since there's so much sugar in our diets, including, people are actually doing too much fruits, and fruit juices are a real problem. I stopped giving my kid fruit juice when he was pretty young, and I was really glad because it actually contributes to picky eating. And we're going to see here how the sugars actually, it's not a good source of ATP. So we're looking at cells in a cancer cell. So an unhealthy cancer cell only produces 2 ATPs per molecule of glucose. And so that same molecule of glucose in a healthy cell produces 38 ATPs. So, if you look at that photograph that we were looking at earlier and compare that with some of the kids that you see in schools, you could see how much more energy these kids have. So getting them on really good quality fats, detoxifying them with really healthy like baths and stuff, using the magnesium salts, the apple cider vinegar, giving them, organic foods and organic meats, pastured meats that have a lot of vitamin D in them. Because the foods, the chickens, that are producing the eggs, if they're out in the sun, they're absorbing that vitamin D and getting them into the cells and helping the whole thing out. Researchers have also found that fewer and smaller mitochondria are found in the skeletal muscle of insulin-resistant, obese, or type 2 diabetes subjects. So the mitochondria get sick through the wrong kind of food and LED lights. And then they get little. They can't produce enough energy for the body to function properly. So I'm just feeling like so many of these problems that people are having, both digestive, muscle problems, muscle mass. Somebody was asking me about that the other day. What can I do to increase muscle mass? And I'm feeling like if we keep, feeding ourselves the factory foods that are totally denatured, and we're sitting under LED lights and looking into computer screens all day, it's just a recipe for disaster, and so us becoming warriors and using our brains, using our discernment and our power of the voice to take our lives back and start to, go into the schools and say, hey, these lights are burning my kids' eyes. Send your kids to school with the orange glasses. We have a center down here in my town. It's a family resource center, and they turned all of their lights into the LED fluorescent lights, which are really hideous. They're really, really bad. And I can't even walk in that place anymore. They burn my eyes. And so during one of I was in a writing class there, and I mentioned that I felt like the lights were burning my eyes, and everybody in that class piped up and said, oh, me too. It feels like it's burning my skin too. So I was able, through the group, we decided we're going to turn the lights off and just open up the shades and get the natural light in from the outside, because we have two big windows. So that's just an example of simple things that we can do to reduce our exposure to these things they're causing problems. So that experiment with the nucleus was talking about how for cancer, what happens once the mitochondria gets dysfunctional, it stops producing enough ATP, so it can't even take care of its own the cellular metabolism, let alone being part of a bigger organ or part of the blood or part of your hormone system. Then it starts to, as more and more of the cells get weak, then the mitochondria are weakened, then that organ is totally weakened too. So in the case of people with any kind of disease, autism, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, these systems are totally breaking down. And so it's up to us to start to educate ourselves as to what is really doing this. And unfortunately, this stuff is just coming at us from all directions, including the very light in our kids' schools, in our own houses, right? So that study that they did, they found out that the mitochondria actually change first in cancer cells. So the cancer is not driven by the gene theory, okay, the premise of conventional cancer explanations. Most doctors are unaware that the buildup of lactic acid as a result of the cancer, not the originating cause. So they try to de-acidify the cancer patient's body by recommending the patients eat an alkaline diet. So what this is talking about here is the fact that they have found in many, many studies that the alkaline diets that are being recommended for cancer patients is actually, it's not the problem. It's not that acid and alkaline at all. It's more that what happens when the mitochondria get weak and they get dysfunctional, that the cancer cell stops using oxygen to make energy and shifts to non-oxygenated fermentation process to produce energy. So that's completely toxic to the system, and there's nothing that you could eat that would turn that around. As far as working on the genetics and that alkaline, it's not the issue. So one of the things, I just want to switch over to the LED lights. So if we look at that photograph again, and we look at the lighting in that photograph, how it's completely natural, you can kind of see a little reddish hue to things. And the circadian cycles, these people live with the sun, and our bodies have been designed to live with the sun as light, as natural light for millions of years, right? And with the advent of lighting, this has been changing pretty rapidly, because first of all, we were living with the sun, and then there was fire. People cooked and lived around fire at nighttime, and that light it has a real red hue to it, right? And that's the infrared light that's really healthy and healing for us. Then we had candles and oil burners, and these were also red, on the red end of the spectrum, of the light spectrum. So they were okay. And then when we went to electric lights, that was the incandescent lights, were the very first lights that came into our homes when we started using electricity, right? Those lights are completely fine. They are red. They have a full spectrum of the light spectrum in them. And I think what I'm going to do here is, if Gaz is around, I'm going to just take a little break. I think we're close to the top. We got a few more minutes. Yeah, let's just keep going. We'll take a break at the top of the hour here. So the sunlight is very long wavelengths, right? And they're very healthy. They penetrate very slowly into our bodies. And that's what the sun provides for us. And so if you are smart about it, you're not going to be sitting in the sun, because over time, over an extended period of time, of course, it can be damaging. And so you see these kids running, they've got those long sleeve shirts on that are really lightweight cotton, protecting them from too much sun, right? They even got the scarves around their necks, some of them. And they're very dark skinned, so they have a lot of melanoma, they have a lot of protection in their blood and their skin against the sun. But that sunlight is what our bodies have gotten used to. And so then as the light industry, full spectrum LED lights. So the light industry, what happened? I'm going to answer that question. Vanessa's asking about what about full spectrum LED lights. The light industry, I don't know what's really the driving force behind this, but on the non-conspiratory thinking mode, you'd think, okay, they're trying to save us energy. But it's not true. But anyhow, they have this full spectrum lights, which is the incandescent lights. The ones that we used to use a long time ago that have no frosting on it. So they're clear, incandescent, and they have that little wire thing in between. They're very they look real sensitive. So you don't want to move them around, especially if they're hot. That's the key to keeping these light bulbs working a long time, is don't touch them when they're hot. But anyhow, I know. There's another, let's see here. There's another, if you go to my photos or go to the recent photos in there, or here, let me get this. I'm going to show you. Here's another photograph in the photo section about the spectrum of light in different kinds of light bulbs. Okay, and here's the other one. Where's that other one? Okay, so you can see in that one photo, the graphs there, the sunlight, right? Here's the other one. Okay, so the very first link that I just put up, and if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can look in the photo section. Yes, the F-Luck is very important for PCs, laptops, and I think you can even get them for your cell phone too. Super important to get something on your computer that can warm up the light. You don't want to keep looking into lights, this computer screen with these blue light. So that first link that I put up, you can see where, okay, see the daylight? There's a graph, there's a bunch of graphs there. The very first one is daylight. See how full, that's what they talk about, full spectrum. It's really full of all the different shades of light. This is really, really healthy. This is what our body is designed just perfectly to help us with our organ function, with the hormonal function, melatonin production, which we'll talk about a little bit later. This is the natural healthy one, that first one that says daylight. Here's the incandescent light bulbs, the second one for our homes. These are the ones that you want to be using. And it has very low amounts of the blue light, which is okay because we usually go outside in the morning. In the morning time is where there's a lot of blue light, which is natural and healthy for you, but just the natural stuff outside. And so you can see that the incandescent has a nice, healthy, almost the same amount as the daylight of the red spectrum. So that's the infrared, near infrared red light that's very healing and very healthy for you. This red light has a heat element to it. There's a heating property of that wavelength of light. And the light industries, the light bulb industries, were thinking to save energy and to stop, I don't know, greenhouse effect. Is this all tied in? I don't know. Don't get me started. But anyway, so to stop the emitting of heat, they took the red out of there so that you only had the blue light, which is a good bright light to read by, supposedly. But taking this red out of there, this is the part that nourishes the mitochondria. It penetrates into the cells, like really deep into your body, into the cells of your body. This red light, it's a long wave light, light wave, and long waves. And the blue ones down on the 400 range is a really short wave, and it doesn't penetrate very deeply into the body. But it can penetrate your eyes, and this is why there's like huge problems with so-called age-related macular degeneration. Starting to be a huge problem, and it's going to get bigger, like real soon. I mean, I've got lots of patients now that are getting those shots in their eyes. Those shots cost $1,400 a shot for their eyes because they're getting macular degeneration and they want to stop it. Which it won't stop it. It'll slow it down, those shots. But that's the incandescent. We're going to take a tiny little break now because we're at the top of the hour, and I hope Guise is here. He'll just put some music on, and I'll just be back real quick. If you have any questions, we're going to talk some more about lighting and ideas for how we can mitigate this in our lives, okay? Yeah, we're going to talk about all that. Thanks. All righty. So thank you, you guys, for hanging out here. We're coming back for the second part of the show. This is Yolene Slee on Nourishing Peace program of People for People Radio. I have just put into the chat room the link for the second graph that talks about light. If you want to click on that, you can see that second graph that's going to come up, because we're talking about LED lights and the different kinds of lights and wavelengths that are healthy and unhealthy for the body. Mine's taken a little while to open up on that one. Maybe everybody else is trying to open it. Anyhow, so let's see. Let's just go to that first graph, actually, back there. So we saw that first graph. That one's coming up okay. Let's finish up with that one. So we got the daylight. I hope you guys, if you have a problem, if you go into the photo section of the, just right of the chat room and the quick links, if you go into the photo section, and you're going to find a photo that's in there that I, Yolene Slee, put on there. It's called LED-lighting-2. So open that one up and you can take a look at it and see the very first one is the light spectrum of daylight. The second one is the light spectrum of the old-fashioned incandescent lights. These were the ones that everybody was using even 10 years ago. And then to the right of that one is the fluorescent lights. And look at how spiky and horrible that looks. That looks really deadly. These are very radioactive, the fluorescent lights. So this is why they did have a spike of a little bit of red in there, and then that green light, and then there's a spike of some blue and yellows. But it's just not very nourishing for the eyes. The eyes depend on light to keep them healthy. And that full spectrum light that's over there in the daylight gets to all different levels of the eye is like a little hologram. It's really amazing. It's so magical. I mean, our bodies are so miraculous. It's cool. We're so completely nourished by our environment and stuff. If you look at that daylight, the beautiful spectrum of light there, and you could just imagine how that full spectrum of light is way more nourishing than, look at that fluorescent, the spikes in this fluorescent, how bad that is. So then from the fluorescent light, we went to the halogen light, which doesn't look that bad, right? There's very little blue light in there. Those shortwave blue lights are very deadly for the eyes especially, but also for that mitochondria. In the halogen, even though there's not that much blue, it actually doesn't look so bad. It's almost the same as the incandescent, actually. So there was something about the halogen lights that are not beneficial. I think there's a different way to look at them than the wavelength. I don't really understand light or electricity very well, or heat, like all those principles. But anyhow, there's another factor that comes into the halogen lights that makes it not very healthy for us. And I'll probably look into that and see what that was. But so we'll just look at that for now and see that's what the halogen lights are. From these graphs, it doesn't look so bad. I think the next one we might see what it is. So here's the cool white LED lights. If you look, so we're looking at, for if anybody came into the chat room new, we're looking at the photos of the LED lights in the photo section of the quick links. So you can see that huge spike of blue light, right, in the cool white LED lights. These are the lights that when you walk into a room and somebody has one on, it is so bright, like white bright. I was in my friend's house. Okay, so here's a good case study. I have a patient, she's a friend, and she's been coming to me for acupuncture, bringing her kids in, everybody in for years. So she started getting this really weird rash. It was really itchy, and it was raised, and just horrible looking rash. And she couldn't figure out what it was. She went to dermatologists, she went to all these doctors, she went to specialists. I even brought her to my 96-year-old acupuncture teacher, herbalist. Nobody could really get it. And she ended up going on prednisone. Of course, she didn't tell me until like after she was done with the course of prednisone, because she knew I'd get mad at her. because prednisone is so deadly too. It probably hurts the mitochondria, I'm sure, because anything that's toxic in your body and is causing any kind of reaction like that, if you take prednisone, it will clear up the surface of the situation, but it drives the pathogen deeper into your body. And so that's why people who take lots of, and the antibiotics do the same thing. So that's why people keep getting sick, because they clear that surface up. It looks like it gets better, but there's this little pathogen, this little like a flame that's smoldering deep down inside because it got pushed deeper into your body by the antibiotics and the prednisone. Anyway, I'm getting off the subject. But anyhow, she did the prednisone twice. She didn't tell me, and they kept coming back worse and worse. And the last time I saw her, it was really bad. She wasn't responding to anything. So I came over to her house the other day. She has bees, and I went over to get some beeswax because I'm making some salves. And I walked into her house, and she had this lamp on, and it was the reading lamp where her reading chair was, and it was so bright white. I mean, we were talking, and I kept moving so she would be in front of me so I wouldn't have to have the light coming onto my face. Finally, I said, I keep moving, because she would move too, like wondering like we were dancing, and I go, I keep moving because I can't handle that light. It's coming right into my eyes, and it hurts. I just don't like it. And she goes, oh, and I go, that's LED lights, right? Because I've been telling all of my patients, I have this whole email that I sent out like 2 years ago when I first started getting onto this, with all this information about LED lights and how dangerous it is. Well, a lot of people probably read it and thought, oh, that's cute. She's, talking about lights, da-da-da. But, they're not taking it seriously. I really want to get Mark Steele on my show and interview him about some ideas about this, because he's a scientist and he knows, what I'm talking about. It's very, very dangerous. So I told her, I'm like, you got to change those LED lights out. Maybe this is causing your problem. And she turned around and she went to reach in there and take the light out. It was on. With LED lights, what it is it takes out, see how on the cool LED lights, there's just a very little bit of that red spectrum. That's the spectrum that's the long wave heating wavelengths. They heat things up so they can penetrate your body and keep you warm. So if we look up at the incandescent or the daylight, those have a lot of that warming long wave red light. And in nature, this red light actually helps people to stay warm. It helps people to keep their body temperature up so we can resist infections, we can resist cancer, we can resist just having kidney damage even, because if you get too cold, we were just talking about this at the break, about how we notice as we get older, we start to get cold, and the cold actually makes you have to pee more. Well, that means that the kidneys don't like it. They hate the cold. We need this red spectrum of light for normal bodily functions, and part of it has to do with keeping the body warm, right? There's a whole bunch of things that red light does. But keeping the body temperature up and in the proper range is a very important function of that. And the only thing that's going to do that is that red spectrum of light. So if you look down at the cool white LED lights, you've got that huge spike of white light, so damaging for the retinas, for the skin. And so anyway, I know, I was telling that story about my friend. So she reached in there to touch that light because you can't feel the heat, because that red part of the spectrum, the red wavelengths, that's the infrared wavelengths, that's what emits heat. And that's what would keep the incandescent bulbs hot. If you look up at the incandescent bulbs, how much red spectrum is there, that's why they're hot, because they still have that red, and that's why they're healthy for us. They're not damaging. But you can reach up into that cool white LED light and touch it and turn it and take it out while it's on. That is very toxic. It's deadly, okay, to touch an LED light when it's on. Okay, it needs to cool down. Even though it doesn't have that heat emitting out of there, it's still like these those blue waves are still active. They're like, the electricity. I don't understand exactly how it works, but I'll just try to describe it. It's activated, right? It's pushing the light, and it's coming from that spectrum of the blue, the blue part of the spectrum. So it's still activated even though you can't feel it, because it doesn't have that heat part of it, the heat, the long wavelengths to create heat. So that's how come they're selling it as ecological, saving energy. But, if we look at the big picture, I don't know if excuse my French, some mastermind idiot psychopath is going, oh, it's going to save energy here on the light bulb and in our electrical systems, but it's damaging our ATP, because we're not getting that natural amounts of the long red waves, right? The heat waves. And we're getting this huge spike of toxic blue light exposure, right? So people and kids, children and elderly are more sensitive to that blue light, that cold blue light that you see that's spiked there. And I bet you that if you go into your kids' schools and ask them what kind of lighting they have, they're probably going to say that they've changed them out to the cool white LED lights. This is so, so important. You go into the hospitals, same thing. Clinics, same thing. What kind of healing places is this? Is this intentional, or is this just like, okay, we made a mistake? Well, they don't seem to be responding to the science that is coming out right now, big time, that's talking about this stuff. The EU Commission on, I think it was on LED lights, they recently were submitted papers by, there's a doctor, a German doctor, his name is Dr. Wunsch, Wunsch. And I will post some of his talks if you're interested. He's fascinating. I love this stuff. He's like one of my new teachers. And this is where I'm getting all this information from, by the way. He's really good. And he has sent in letters and videos and all of his research. There's other scientists too that he's worked with on this. And the EU recently sent out, they responded to his information saying, because they were reviewing the health aspects of LED lights, because there's all these people onto it now. And they were like, their response to him was like, this is beyond the scope of this committee. Well, what were they supposed to be doing if they weren't taking in the information from scientists who are doing the work to figure this stuff out? They're just getting information from the industries, I guess. I don't know. And then they actually concluded their study, the EU Commission on LED lights, and they said that, that there's no scientific proof that anything that the LED, any kind of, problems with LED lights is going to dim their future. Like, where did they, they did not even consider this science that's coming out. And if you want to check out Dr. Wunsch, he's a really good speaker. And he's actually kind of funny. He's got a very sort of German sense of humor, sort of dry sense of humor. But anyway, as we look at that cool LED lights, so my friend who had that horrible rash, it's been going on for a year and a half. She wasn't coming to me very often. I kept telling her to change your lights out, change your lights out, change your lights out. She wasn't taking it seriously. She never did. So after I came back, she was on prednisone and all these herbs that this master herbalist gave her. Nothing was working. I went to her house and I said, take the LED lights out of your house. Go buy some incandescent bulbs, because you can find them. I was talking with someone in the chat room about stuff, and I was telling them that, yeah, thank you, whoever put his name in there, Alexander Wunsch, yeah. Thanks, Laws. So she finally changed them out, and she went around to just some places around and found some. They were frosted, but they were still the incandescent. That's better than the LED lights, but if you can find the ones that aren't frosted, that's the best kind to use. You want the clear incandescent lights. So she changed them out, and she called me the next morning. Okay, so she went out right away when I was at her house, and I was kind of like, you took prednisone. I explained what it was going to do again, and she goes, I didn't want to tell you, but anyhow, so she was desperate enough because this was so itchy. Her daughter's getting married soon, and she's like, I don't want to be going through this. Well, so, I mean, how much does it take to get somebody to go change their light bulbs out? I mean, it's really a lot. People, I don't know. We're just trusting of these industries, thinking that, it must be okay because it's out on the market. So she went and changed them, and I talked to her the next morning, and she was about 70% better. And she even after the prednisone, it was still really raised and itchy, and she was miserable. And just changing these out, I haven't heard from her. I talked to her yesterday, but I forgot to ask her, but how her skin's doing. But I bet it's doing way better. I have another friend who, when Mark Steele was talking on People for People radio, so if you guys are real interested in Mark Steele's talks, you can go into the pod section and look at any of the YouTubes or the podcasts from Mark Steele, and he talks about the science behind LED lights and how they are actually part of a big weapon system. That's connected with the smart meters and all that. So I'm not going to go into that. But anyhow, so you can see that cold LED lights. This is a really good, if you drag this onto your desktop, you can have this. I think it will work for you to drag it onto your desktop. That's how I got it onto mine. I just dragged it from an article. So this is a really great graph. And then you can see somebody was asking about the warm white LED lights. And so you can see there's a real small spike, right, of the blue. But they've got that, this is still in the cool section, the green spike that's up there. That's still kind of on that end of the spectrum. It's not warm. And very little red light. It's almost as little as the cold white LED lights. So it's basically, they're just masking the numbers here. They're trying to make it look better so they can, if you look at light bulbs, at the package of the light bulbs, they're going to have, they have this graph of how warm the light is. And so the cold LED lights is going to be very cold on there, so that's a bad selling point. So in order to fudge those numbers, they have less of that blue light there, but still very little red light. But there's definitely more red light than the cold LED light. So they are just fudging the numbers so they look better. But, still, so just the carry away from all this is get the incandescent bulbs, you guys. I've decided, and I keep forgetting to do this, but whenever I go anywhere, even to my sister's house or anybody's house anymore, if I'm traveling, I'm going to start packing up some incandescent bulbs and change the bulbs out. Like if you stay in a hotel room or, going to somebody else's houses, most likely they're going to have LED lights in their house. So I was talking to someone on the chat room, private chatting with him, and, how can we get away from this? And basically we have to become warriors and realize that, we are in a war here. And this is part of the weapon, and have they weaponized our concepts of spiritual understanding by, putting in these concepts through the New Age, whatever, blah, 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 of light and dark, that light is good. So we have to trust the light and we don't trust the dark. So Alexander, and is that, I don't know, I'm just asking this question, is that leading us into trusting this light, trusting this white light that, we have learned through the New Age culture about like, oh yeah, go into the light and this and that, light is good, black is bad. We got to get away from ascribing judgment on light and dark. So I really love this guy, Alexander Wunsch. He's a great speaker. If you guys really, if you're into it, you should listen to his talks. He's so good. And he uses, when he talks, okay, so LEDs affect the melatonin production in your body. right? It diminishes the melatonin in your body, and that's what contributes to cancer, to breast cancer, to prostate cancer, and I think it was colon cancer or something. But the mechanism is that blue light gets in there, it damages the mitochondria, and so that has its whole array of influences that I was talking about earlier. And he calls melatonin the hormone of darkness. And he doesn't mean that like, ooh, it's like darkness, it's the dark forces and evil and you're going to die if you go into the dark. I don't know. No, and I love that he did that because I think he's trying to take the judgment off of darkness. Like, how can we live without melatonin? Vanessa was telling me on the break there that I have somebody that she knew that the kids, they all started wearing the blue light blocker glasses at nighttime, like a couple hours before they go to bed. And my niece, they have candle o'clock at nighttime, and they turn all the lights off and they light the candles. And so they call it candle o'clock. And she said she can't believe how the kids, they just totally calm down. They just have candlelight in the house. And so Vanessa was saying these kids that started wearing the red glasses or the blue light blocker glasses, they finally started sleeping through the night. They were waking, crying, and just wakeful. And that's across the board. That's what it does. If you start like in the afternoon, especially if you're on computers, you want to make sure that you have, I think Laws put a link in there earlier to the F-Lux. I think it's free online still. You can get the blue light blocker app on your computer, on your cell phones too, and your laptops, everything. So that's really important. I learned that from Mark Steele. He talked about that back then. So that warms up the light that's coming out of your LED screen from the computers and the cell phones. And so I think with Neo we were talking, and he was asking how to get away from that. So yeah, definitely everybody should have the F-Lux on all of their screens. Carry around incandescent bulbs if you're going to go to someone else's house to sleep. And especially just for the ones inside the bedroom, change them out. Make sure they're off for a while before you touch them, because they are deadly, those LED lights. And if they break, the chemicals that are released are really, really toxic, and they get everywhere because it's very fine dust. Okay, so just be really careful. I took all of the LED lights out of my office, and I have this patient that came in, and he's like an policeman, highway patrol, I think he was. I mean, he's not very woo-woo at all, or kind of person that you would think was sensitive to energies. But he walked in my office, and we had just finished changing all the lights back to incandescent bulbs. And he goes, God, did you just like super deeply clean your office? And I go, no. And he goes, I could swear that you had just hired 14 people to come in and clean this office, like everything. The ceiling, I have really high ceilings. It's an old building. And I go, no, we didn't. We just changed the light bulbs out. And he's like, I can't believe it. It's so wild. And this guy, I'm telling you, he is like super like not sensitive person. And that's what he said. He used the word 14 people to help me twice. He thought, he was just amazed at the difference that light, because they call it dirty light. The LED lights, that's what it is. It's a dirty light. It's very toxic. So when you're changing the bulbs, you want to make sure they're, they've cooled down. Even, let them sit off for at least 10 minutes and then change them out, because you don't want to risk breaking them. Okay. Yeah. So Neo, yeah, well, if you ever get into anybody else's bedroom. But yeah, and so, I was talking about ways that we can start to, diminish our exposure to this stuff. Like, we're going to have to start going into the schools. I told you about my experience here at this Family Resource Center. Now I've noticed that they're keeping the lights down, and I actually talked to two of the people who are on the board of directors with them, that we've decided that because they can't change anything, they don't own the building, they can't change the light fixtures. So we just thought, why don't we put out and blast out an email to find out if anybody's has extra lights, like standing lights that we could just get and put them everywhere, or lamps, and buy the incandescent bulbs and just have lamps everywhere in this family resource center. And I just thinking, if people are either in schools where you have a say about what you're doing in the classroom, have parent meetings and bring these graphs in, share those videos from Dr. Alexander Wunsch with people who are, you think might be interested, because there's some really short videos that he has. When once you start to grasp the depth of what is going on with these lights, it's really scary. And so I'm feeling like, okay, probably can't do anything with the hospitals, but just steer clear of the hospitals anyway. You won't be exposed there. But how do they expect people to get better in these hospitals with those lights blasting all night and day and night? So, I've heard of people trying to get the, classrooms, people going into classrooms and working with the teacher and see if they can, at least get the FLux on the computers for the kids, because children are very much more sensitive to this than people like after 20. And then I think it's after 40 or 50 or something, you get more sensitive again. But so the blue light is actually, so here's the case. They, in one place, Dr. Wunsch was talking about that they warmed the light up instead of, I know what it is. It's that the LED lighting graph. The wavelength that, that wasn't it. Anyway, there was this experiment that they did. They warmed the light up and they put instead of the blue light in there, they pulled the light spectrum, they like cut off the ends, and they had it be like a violet light that was driving the actual light to be emitted, was from the violet part of the spectrum, which is next to blue. And that's actually worse for children. So, there's just not enough studies and scientific proof, because they're trying to fudge with the edges and with the blue and the, to get the lights more acceptable to people. But there's just, like he was talking about, how kids are more and more sensitive. Their eyes are more sensitive because they're not developed. So it's so important to have, at least in your home, change those lights out. But if you can work with the teachers in the classrooms, maybe everybody could just bring lamps in and put lamps everywhere with incandescent bulbs. In the stores and stuff, like even the natural food, the co-op here in Oregon, Southern Oregon in Ashland, it's the best co-op I've ever been to in my life. If you ever get over to this part of the world, check out the food co-op in Ashland, Oregon. It's great. But they just changed all their lights out to LED lights. So even they are, put this toxic stuff in their place. So yeah, have your glasses with you at all times. I've got mine on right now. There's a difference in the kind of glasses that you can get. The ones that are red, that block out the most amount of blue light, those are for, like, if you're on the computer a long time. But they say, like, if you have to drive home from work, you should just wear these other ones that are more yellow. Oh, yay, Neil. I'm so glad to hear you changed your lights out. Let's see what happens. If they recommend that you wear a more yellow shade if you have to drive, because the red ones, they can make you sleepy, because they cut out the blue light, they bring in the long wave, relaxing red lights of the spectrum, part of the spectrum. And that's what helps the body to relax into the ability to produce melatonin, which is what he calls it, the hormone of darkness. So it's alerting our bodies that it's getting nighttime and it's time to sort of shut down the metabolism, shut down, slow down the body, slow down the organ function and stuff. So you're getting out of that fight or flight place of the blue light. And if you're sitting around with blue lights watching TV until you try to go to bed and you got LED lights in your house, that blue light, like you saw how intense of a spike that blue light is. I mean, it's even more, it's stronger than what is, if you look at the spectrum on the daylight one, that cool white LED spike of blue light is higher than what's in normal daylight, right? And it's going to keep you awake. It stops the production of melatonin. And so people who are taking melatonin supplements, it's not really going to help that much because, you're getting the hormone, but that's a synthetic hormone that you're taking, basically. It's not natural. Okay, and there's not a lot of studies. People ask me all the time, should I take melatonin? Well, I tried it before, and it didn't help me. And I just don't trust taking exotic hormones. I just don't. I prefer doing things with diet and things like this. Like, let's look at the root of the problem. And Dr. Munch says, the only safe solution to this problem with the LED lights is to eliminate the source. So that's why I'm talking to Guise about trying to get Mark Steele to come onto my show. I want to interview him. And if anybody has any questions for Mark over the next few weeks, hopefully I'll get him on, sometime soon. I'd love to get your questions and put them in my list of questions for him because I'm not a scientist and I would love to get his recommendations about exactly what to do because everybody's got questions, including me, how to do this, because it comes in through your skin too. It's not just coming in through our eyes. And I think it was him that actually explains that, the mechanism of how it comes into your skin and affects you. And I'm pretty sure it was his talks where he showed pictures of LED lights from the street lights, and people had put up those, blockout curtains, which I really recommend. But he showed pictures of the spectrum of light. I guess it was maybe an infrared camera or something that he showed that those blackout curtains, even though it blocked the light out that we could see, it didn't block the blue light out. And so, maybe that's why sometimes people even put the blackout. If you have LEDs lights outside of your window, I'm thinking about, I want to ask him this, like, can we get like that? I found in a thrift store once a whole roll of this cellophane. It was like I think it was wrapping paper, for like a Christmas wrapping paper or something, and it was cellophane and it was red. And I wondered, so I bought it. It was like $1 for the whole thing. And I wondered if people have LED lights outside of their windows and they want to try to block it out, could we use that kind of thing to change the wavelengths to a longer frequency, a longer wavelength. So, and I don't know what that's why one of my questions. So there's a whole bunch of questions because people are coming out with these, recommendations for clothing that are protective against the different kinds of radiation, the smart meters and stuff. But there's also the LED light radiation. I want to get his input onto these different ideas for protecting ourselves because, so one, right before in my writing class, there was 2 classes where I went in there. The first one, the lights were on, and it was really burning my eyes so bad, and I told the teacher afterwards. The next time we left the lights on, the third class, the lights were off, and it was way better. We just used the natural light for the classroom. And then the third class that I went into, the lights were on again, and I had brought my red glasses. So I just put those on, and people were like, wow, that looks weird. And anyway, my eyes felt better. I felt like it wasn't burning my eyes. And I came home and my skin was like on fire. Some of you guys know that I have some rosacea from an old sunburn that I had gotten. And the chemtrails, when they spray really heavily, that rosacea gets really bad. I came home and I thought, oh good, my eyes feel pretty good. These glasses really helped, And I looked in the mirror and my face was totally lit up. So that blue spectrum of the light, the LED lights, affected my skin. So that kind of spurred me on to get back into this topic and do this show today on the LED lights. Definitely, in your homes, change them out. I'm so glad to see Neo change his lights out. Yay. You get the star for the day, Neo. And, get yourself a pair of these glasses. I bought a pair in a thrift store for $6, the yellow ones. And they're pretty good for just like now. I don't want to block out too much of the blue light because it's still, only 1 o'clock here. I guess it's 1:40. And then you want to get the red lights, the blue light blocker glasses. And if you're in Europe, what I would do is get the ones that Dr. Wunsch makes. He's got a website, and he sells them for, I don't know, they're kind of expensive, but if I was there, I would get them. But they cost, it's just as much. I don't know, let's just say it's 80 euros, but it cost 80 euros to send them to the United States. So it's like double the cost for me. So I haven't bought any from him. But I got some online here. It's called bluelightblocker.com. I will put some more links in after the show if you guys are interested, and maybe I'll even put them in the study. Oh, maybe I should just put my article. I have an article that has all this information on it. You guys are probably going to see a lot more people walking around with these weird looking red and yellow glasses. I know what I was going to say about Mark Steele too. So he had that talk where he showed the curtains, how they didn't block out the LED lights. Even though it blocked out the light that we could see. If he has pictures of himself with his glasses on, and those glasses, he was in LED lighting, and the glasses totally blocked out the LED lights. So he said in that talk that he was going to do some more studying up on that, about the effects of the glasses and stuff. So I'm wondering if there's any other questions in the chat room. Let's see, need to look up on the light spectrum of flames, fire, hypnotic. Well, see, the thing about what I feel about the MK Ultra mind control, because people are talking about that in the chat room right now, is that everything is so convoluted and twisted up that they take something that's good, like firelight, like sitting around a fire with your friends and your family or people that you love, and at nighttime. It's really comforting, and it's what we've done for millennium. People have been sitting around fires. Now we sit around TVs and the computer screens, and we're getting filled with these blue lights. Right. And they have us afraid of the old ways of doing things. We got to not let them keep us in fear. I know about MK mind control. once was driving, and I didn't really know much about it before, but I started listening to, different shows and stuff and was hearing about it. I was driving home from work one night, and their power of suggestion is so strong. We really have to keep that in mind. So I'm glad you guys are actually talking about it, because I was driving home and I never ever thought about MK Ultra mind control. But we have a 4,000 foot pass that's a mountainous pass that goes from the town I work in to my home. And I have to drive over that. And it was dark and it was foggy. It was in the wintertime, 2 winters ago. And for some reason, it kept being in my mind, MK Ultra mind control, it was like over and over and over. And I even thought, like, why am I thinking these things? I don't know if they were targeting me with those thoughts, but it was there. And I've never done it before, and I made sure that I've never done it afterwards, because we do have control of our minds. We do not need to let them control us, even though they might try. So, but I just caught me off guard, and I was going over and over in my mind. And I got to the bottom of that mountain, and there was this huge buck on the side of the road, and I slowed way down, and that buck jumped out from the side of the road, and he almost jumped onto my car. His foot scraped the top of my car, and I thought, oh my God, I broke his leg. So I pulled over. I couldn't find him anywhere. So it was really scary. I thought I could have gotten killed, because that guy was huge. And it's only going like 50 miles an hour or something, but still that's enough to trash a small car. So anyway, I get home, and I was going to make a pumpkin pie. So I get the pumpkin out, and I felt like I had this brush with death. That's how I felt. It was scary, and I'm like, why was I having that go through my head? Like, is this really making me, I don't know, come this close to an accident? So I start making this pumpkin pie, and I'm putting everything in. I bake my own pumpkin and stuff, and I was ready to put the pumpkin into the pie crust, and I just, a little teeny drop got onto my pinky finger. And I usually taste the pie, the filling before I bake it, just to make sure I didn't forget something. But I just had like a tiny little drop on my little pinky, and I touched that to my tongue, and I immediately went in. It was really, really bitter. I've never had this happen before or after. It was so, so bitter. It didn't go away for hours. But, and my body went into anaphylactic shock. I started not being able to breathe. I was getting itchy on the inside of my arms and behind my legs. And I started panicking, because I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. And then, and so I told my husband about what happened, that I had these thoughts of the MK Ultra mind control in my head while I was driving home. I never thought of them before. Never. I heard about them, and I've watched YouTubes, and I saw, heard people talking about them, but it's not something that I really thought about a lot. I don't like going into those realms of unreality. Anyhow, so it was just weird that they have that, I guess, that ability to mess with our minds like that. And so, my question about the whole New Age going into the light and being afraid of the dark, so Dr. Wunsch calls the melatonin, which is so, so important in our lives for being able to enjoy the dark time of day, which is nighttime, and to have deep sleep, which is really nourishing. And our body needs deep sleep, the REM states of sleep. And with too much of that blue light, the brain cannot, and the hormones are getting damaged in the mitochondria. Everything's on alarm because there's too much white light. Okay, and there's not enough nourishing and ability for the body to fully take advantage of the darkness. So I was so glad to see him call melatonin the hormone of darkness, because there really is nothing wrong with the dark. It's very nourishing. It's the time when our body rests and recuperates from the daytime. We get stressed out. He talks about the balance in life and like how there's all these stressors. Actually, on that wavelength diagram, on that one in the photo section, if you look at the LED lighting graphs, the daylight one, that where you see the full spectrum of light, all the way from the light colors, all the colors, they all have a different function and they're all really important. And that's not to say that the white light or the blue light is bad for us. It's actually important for us. And the dark is really, really important for us. And people just get stressed out and they're pushing. And they go to hospitals and they get exposed to all the LED lights there, on top of the bad medicine and the frustration of, trying to get better in a system that's not very healthy, doesn't work. So they clipped off in the light bulbs. So this is what is, when we're trying to go to sleep or we're getting ready for it, it's at nighttime when our body naturally wants to rest and rejuvenate and heal itself. Nighttime is when we heal most, when we're totally shut down. The autonomic nervous system shuts down. You're not like digesting food. You're not running from appointments to appointments. It's a time when we feel that deep peace and quiet and relaxation. Like, what's wrong with that? That is dark, okay? That's a good thing. And I'm not talking about satanic crap or any of that weird Masonic shit. I'm talking about the real light and the real dark. Both of them are really important. And so by taking back the power of our own discernment or belief systems, like that, we can see through that because they're idiots. They have no imagination, really. They come up with all this stuff to try to trick us into being fearful and to, push our limits. Like, staying up late is okay every once in a while, but don't, it's really not a good idea to be pushing yourself to stay up all night, every single night. The circadian rhythm is the rhythm that our body has, our hormonal system, our spirit, our soul, our physical body, the mental, the emotional, everything is connected on this energetic wave of day and night. Okay, so if you are staying up late, that's actually a good thing sometimes. Like, I went out to a dance the other night because I need to stay up late sometimes because I go to bed too early. Hold on. I gotta turn plug my laptop in here. It's running out of batteries. So one other thing that I wanted to cover real quick about the LED lights and the fluorescent lights is the flicker. And you guys, this is really interesting because that flicker, the firelight, it flickers, but it's real slow. And it's very comforting, and the body just kind of knows what to do with it. But if you look at the flicker on LED lights, it is so fast. It's like 100 flickers, 100% flickering. Incandescent lights, so normal sunlight doesn't flicker at all. Natural light does not flicker at all, turn on and off. For the indoor lights, incandescent lights flicker, they have a 4% flicker rate. So it's not bad, 4%. Fluorescent lights shot up 10 times to 40% flicker rate. And LED lights are 100% flicker rates. That means it's just like flickering on and off, like constantly. What's that about? Anyhow, so if you guys all have smartphones, apparently you can turn the movie camera on and slow it way down. And you can take pictures of LED lights and it will show you the flickering. So Dr. Munch has that on his some of his talks. He's got videos of that, but you guys can all do that yourself. Check it out. So yeah, that flickering, it causes headaches, seizures, epilepsies, general malaise, makes you feel horrible. And the delayed effects is things like eye strains, like we talked about earlier, the age-related macular degeneration. Autism is totally affected by the flicker rates of lights. So, if you have those things going on in yourself or your family, you want to really be careful with that and definitely change those lights out in your home. But, go check out the schools too, because, your kids are staying in school for grandkids for lots of hours every day under these lights. Might be worth opening up that conversation with people about the lights and just see if we can start to turn this around. Some people are not very responsive to any of this. Like some people, it doesn't, or maybe they just don't notice it. But I'm really responsive to it, and so in a way, I gotta give thanks to my sensitivities because it pushes me. I'm like a warrior. I've always kind of gone into issues that are going on in my life. I kind of embrace them and try to figure out what's going on. And so I just give thanks to my skin for being sensitive, to my eyes being sensitive, because it pushes me to find people who are on, the same wavelength, to use that metaphor. It's so important for us not only to have these lights changed out in our houses, but also in our lives to have warm relationships with people, to be around people that we really trust, and we can feel that on an energetic level once we get our digestion good through proper food and things like this lighting. It's so insidious. We're around it all the time. But there's something we can do. We have to do it. We can't just be complacent and wait for these industries to come around and start going, oh, well, maybe we just won't make that much money and we'll just turn things around and do things that are good for people. That's not their agenda. Okay. So I hope that this has been illuminating for you guys. Wake up some light bulbs there in your life, and just to start to really give thanks for even the difficulties that you're having, because those difficulties have pushed you to even sit here and listen to me for 2 hours. And hopefully you'll get on and you will check out some of Dr. Wunsch's videos. He's really, really good, and he's funny in his own German sort of dry humor way. So let's see. Also, going out, being outside. And this is something that's for me, I have to do this more often. I live up in this beautiful area, and I'm just inside. I go from work, I cook, so that's a problem too. I'm inside cooking most of the time. But and then I go to work, and at least I have incandescent lights everywhere, but I'm not outside enough. And that's what Dr. Wunsch talks about this too, is the light spectrum is so important. So as much as you can be outside, it's important to get the natural blue light from outside, because your body and your eyes need it. That whole spectrum is important. So the industry has gone out and cut off the ends and just taken the white light so we could see really good. But all those nourishing, the color spectrum does different things to different parts of our bodies. Like in the Chinese medicine, how I've talked about the colors of the different organs and stuff. Well, that's all true. This is a hologram that we're starting to see in science, that this light really does have everything to do with our good health and the balance that we live in the world, right? In the natural world. So the more natural we can have things in our homes, in our kids' schools, right? We want to be in flow with nature. So get to bed early most of the time. Sorry to keep you up so late, you guys, but that's why I didn't want to have my show so late, but it's okay. Now we're doing at least an hour earlier. But, and if you stay up once in a while late, great, but make up for it. Let your body start to get back in sync with the natural cycles of the earth, the sun and the dark, the light and the dark, and so being outside even in the morning, I've been trying to get up and walk outside first thing in the morning before the sun rises, because that's when the blue light is the strongest. And that's the healthy blue light that we want in the morning. So it's really, really good for you. Get up early and get outside. Even if and people who are depressed, being out when the sun first rises to get that first light on you is really good for depression. Okay? So, it's like that rejoicing that we have a new day, and wow, here's the sunlight. What a beautiful gift, And so, yeah, I have a lot of my older patients, if they're depressed, I go, eat your breakfast outside on the patio or something. Just go outside and have a cup of tea. Sit outside, bundle up if it's cold. Because that natural sunlight and the natural light in our homes also, like I said before, is helping to keep our cells, the DNA or the mitochondria, giving it that energy to keep our body at the perfect temperature. If we don't have that, we get cold and we get constricted. Arthritis sets in, and cancer. Cancer loves cold. Arthritis comes from cold. Cold is not your friend. I love the snow, don't get me wrong. And, but in your body, we have to, our bodies are meant to stay at a thermal dynamic level that's, optimal for us. And that's why that full spectrum light, all those shades, the whole spectrum, that rainbow spectrum. And I know Angel's going to call me a hippie for this, and we're taking that rainbow back from the transgender agenda and bringing it back to us. This is our rainbow, okay? It's not about, I won't get off on that, but anyway, I want to really thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed the show. So any questions that you're going to have in the future for Mark Steele or any other ones, write them down and send them in to me so I can make sure I cover them. If you, wake up in the middle of the night, have your journal there and write your questions down. Okay, so Angel, Angemus, Anthony, Laz, and Neo, and Gaz, Rob, Troy, Vanessa, and myself, giving great thanks for you guys for being here. It takes everybody to be here to have good shows and good questions. And I want to thank all of your ancestors and your families for supporting you to be here today, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our ancestors, even if they weren't hippies, or maybe they were. So you guys have a really good night. Love you all. And we'll